October 27, 2025. Sevastopol's Yuzhnaya Bay lay calm as the PK-700 crane, a colossal steel giant worth $92 million and meant to serve the nation's nuclear fleet, began an inexplicable, slow tilt. 10 minutes later, it was gone, submerged, with chaos erupting on shore and key workers trapped beneath. Was this a tragic accident, industrial neglect, or something hidden in plain sight? What truly caused Russia's most expensive maritime disaster in years? At 3:30 in the afternoon, the PK-700 floats steady in Yuzhnaya Bay, its steel hull reflecting the pale afternoon sun. On board, workers and engineers move through routine checks, unaware of the slow change underway. The first sign is subtle, a gentle list, barely noticeable to those on deck. A dockside camera catches it, the waterline creeping higher against the port side, just a few centimeters at first. By 3:30, 2 in the afternoon, the tilt has grown. Eyewitnesses on the pier trade glances as the crane's tower leans further from vertical. One man shouts, pointing at the growing angle. The 350-ton test load still hangs from the crane's main hook, suspended over the bay. Crew members step back from the edge, some pausing to stare at the horizon as the sensation of movement becomes unmistakable. At 3:34 in the afternoon, alarms begin to sound. The list accelerates. On the upper deck, a technician grabs a radio, calling for instructions. Below, in the machinery spaces, the hum of pumps is interrupted by the metallic groan of shifting ballast. The vessel's massive tower, designed to lift submarines, now works against its own stability. By 3:30 Pier in the afternoon, the tilt is visible from across the harbor. Cell phones come out. Some workers scramble across the sloping deck, bracing themselves against railings. Dock workers on shore move back, shouting warnings. The angle of heel now exceeds what any observer would call safe. The test load still dangles, swinging slightly as the vessel's orientation changes. At 3:38 in the afternoon, the list passes a critical threshold. The deck is at a steep angle, and movement on board becomes dangerous. Eyewitnesses describe the sound of metal creaking, a deep, resonant warning. Crew on the main deck begin to abandon their posts, some slipping, others helping colleagues reach ladders and gangways. At 3:39 in the afternoon, the inevitable happens. The massive tower, once upright, crashes into the water with a deep, echoing splash. A wave rolls across the bay, slapping against the piers and sending a spray over the nearest dock. In less than 10 minutes, the PK-700 has gone from routine testing to disaster. The harbor fills with the sound of alarms, shouts, and the distant wail of approaching sirens. The vessel's steel hull, now half submerged, becomes a stark silhouette against the calm water. Onlookers, silent and stunned, watch as chaos unfolds in the heart of Sevastopol's naval yard. Within seconds of the tower's crash, the pier side erupted in confusion. Shouts rolled across the water as onlookers, including dock workers, shipyard staff, and a handful of naval conscripts, strained to make sense of what had just happened. The air filled with the sharp crackle of radios as Port Authority dispatchers relayed urgent calls for assistance. A flurry of small craft, some barely more than skiffs, pushed off from the wharves, engines sputtering as crews steered toward the half-submerged hull. On the quay, a cluster of engineers and supervisors gathered, their faces drawn and pale. Some pointed toward the listing crane, gesturing wildly as if hoping to reverse the disaster with sheer will. Others fumbled for their phones, calling colleagues or recording the aftermath in stunned disbelief. The bay, moments before calm, now churned with the wakes of rescue boats and the distant wail of sirens threading through the harbor haze. Radio traffic grew dense. Port officials barked orders for all available vessels to assist. A tug captain's voice, thick with urgency, cut through the static. "All hands prepare for recovery. There are people in the water." The first responders, a mix of harbor police and shipyard crew, reached the scene within minutes, weaving between drifting debris and oil slicks spreading from the hull. Some boats circled cautiously, searching for survivors or anyone clinging to the twisted railing. Others drew up alongside the wreck, their crews calling names and scanning the water for movement. On the shore, groups of workers stood frozen, some clutching hard hats or jackets, others simply staring. The spectacle of the massive crane lying broken in the bay seemed impossible to process. Rumors rippled through the crowd, questions about sabotage, a freak accident, or something worse. But there was little time for speculation as emergency vehicles crowded the access roads, blue lights flashing while paramedics and fire crews rushed to the water's edge. The sense of order that usually governed the naval yard had vanished. In its place was a raw, unsettled energy, with people running, shouting, and improvising as they tried to help. No one yet understood what had caused the collapse. In the chaos, the only certainty was the scale of the disaster, and the knowledge that nothing in Sevastopol's harbor would be the same again. Construction of the PK-700 Grigory Prosyankin began in November 2018 at Sevastopol, a shipyard with roots stretching back to the days of the Russian Empire. The project launched with high expectations, a heavy lift vessel designed to support the Northern Fleet's most demanding operations. But by early 2025, after 7 years of fits and starts, only about 65% of the crane was finished. The hull, meant to gleam with fresh paint, instead wore streaks of rust. Patches of primer showed through along the deck, and unfinished welds traced the outlines of missing modules. What was supposed to be the pride of Sevastopol harbor became a daily reminder of missed deadlines and broken promises. Inside the shipyard, engineers and laborers faced a revolving door of problems. Funding arrived in unpredictable bursts, often too late to secure critical components. Official records show that between 2019 and 2024, the project halted at least 3 times for lack of materials or overdue payments. Each pause brought layoffs and departures. Experienced welders and electricians left for more stable work, taking their expertise with them. By 2023, internal memos described the workforce as stretched thin and constantly changing, with new hires learning on the job under pressure to catch up. A shipyard engineer who agreed to be interviewed described the atmosphere in blunt terms. They said they were always behind. Every month, another deadline. Parts arrived late, or not at all. Sometimes they had to improvise repairs just to keep moving. It was never enough. Payroll logs from the winter of 2022 show overtime hours spiking, yet progress lagged far behind the official schedule. The engineer pointed to the ballast system as a particular worry. They said problems with pumps and valves had been flagged more than once. Maintenance was delayed because there were no spare parts, or the right people were not available. Those tanks were supposed to be checked and tested, but sometimes the paperwork was signed before the work was finished. Audit reports from the shipyard management confirm that safety milestones were repeatedly skipped or rescheduled. Project schedules from 2021 and 2024 highlight key safety reviews marked as incomplete or pending approval. In one instance, a pressure test for a ballast tank was delayed by 6 months, with no follow-up inspection recorded. By the time the PK-700 rolled out for its final round of tests, the vessel's unfinished look told its own story, a product of chronic underinvestment, a workforce in constant flux, and mounting pressure to deliver at any cost. The technical risk that haunted the project's early years would soon become all too real. Inside the control room of the PK-700, as the heavy test block hung over the water, operators watched the ballast panel closely. The vessel's stability depended on a network of pumps and valves, each responsible for shifting thousands of liters of seawater between tanks below the deck. During routine lifts, this system compensated for any shift in weight, keeping the massive crane upright even as it hoisted loads that would buckle an ordinary dockside crane. But on October 27th, the system did not respond as designed. At 3:34 p.m., with the 350-ton load suspended, the first alarms sounded. The control panel flashed a warning. One of the main ballast pumps failed to activate when commanded. Operators initiated a manual override, but the display showed no change in tank levels. Ballast tank number 3, located on the port side, was supposed to fill rapidly to counteract the crane's heel. Instead, water remained trapped, and the vessel's list continued to grow. Crew in the machinery spaces reported a metallic rattle from the pump housing, followed by silence, a sign that the motor had stalled or the valve was stuck closed. For the next 90 seconds, the control team cycled switches and radioed engine room staff to check fuses and circuit breakers. The vessel's programmable logic controller logged repeated attempts to start the pump, each ending in a fault code. Meanwhile, the angle of heel increased past safe operating limits. Standard procedure called for immediate test suspension and rapid lowering of the load, but the shifting center of gravity left no margin for error. The suspended block, acting as a massive pendulum, pulled the vessel further off balance with every degree of tilt. On deck, technicians could feel the change with each passing moment. The floor beneath their feet slanted more sharply, and the sound of water sloshing inside the hull grew louder. The vessel's righting moment collapsed as the imbalance worsened. In the control room, one operator shouted over the alarms, demanding the test be aborted. But the system's feedback remained unchanged. Tank number 3 was not compensating, and the vessel's fate was sealed. By the time the tower crashed into the bay, the mechanical cause was clear: the failure of a single ballast pump, combined with the inability to redistribute water, allowed the center of gravity to cross the point of no return. Within minutes, a technical anomaly had become a full-scale disaster, traced to a system that had been flagged for maintenance delays and incomplete checks. The machinery logs, alarm histories, and schematic overlays would later become central to the official investigation. But for those on board, the disaster unfolded in real time. One failed pump, one stuck valve, and no way back. 2 men did not return home that evening. The electromechanic, a veteran of Sevastopol's workshops, was last seen below deck, working near the main power distribution cabinet. The sailor, assigned to the crane's maintenance crew, had been preparing emergency gear in the machinery space just minutes before the alarms sounded. As the vessel tilted, both were trapped beneath heavy steel and rising water. Their names quickly spread through the shipyard. Colleagues described them as steady hands, men who understood the risks of unfinished machinery, but showed up every day regardless. On deck, chaos reigned. Over 20 workers scrambled to escape the slanting surface, some slipping into the cold bay, others helping injured co-workers toward the rails. 7 were taken by ambulance to the city hospital, suffering broken bones, deep bruises, and shock. A survivor, his arm in a sling, later told local reporters that there was no time to think. The floor was moving, alarms everywhere. He remembered grabbing a friend's jacket, pulling him up the ladder. Then the water came in. Family members gathered at the hospital's entrance, searching for news amid the confusion. The wife of the electromechanic, her voice trembling, recalled the last message she received, a brief text promising he would be home for dinner. In the days that followed, union representatives and city officials offered condolences, but the sense of loss ran deeper than words. The disaster was not just a technical failure, it was a rupture in the lives of dozens of families, each grappling with the sudden absence of a father, brother, or friend. For Sevastopol's shipyard community, the cost of the PK-700 collapse will be measured not in steel or rubles, but in empty chairs and unanswered calls. On October 29, 2025, investigators from the Russian Investigative Committee arrived at the Sevastopol shipyard, carrying sealed folders and a mandate to uncover what went wrong. Within hours, the collapse of the PK-700 was no longer just a workplace tragedy. It became a criminal case. The lead investigator, a veteran of industrial accident probes, began with the paperwork. Inspection checklists for the ballast system showed missing signatures and incomplete test records. Several safety milestones, required by maritime regulations, were marked pending or simply left blank. Maintenance logs for the failed pump referenced repairs that were scheduled but never carried out. Statements from the engineering committee revealed a pattern: pressure from above to meet revised deadlines, even if it meant skipping protocols. Internal memos, later obtained by the authorities, documented warnings about the ballast tanks and the risk of running tests without full system verification. One memo dated just 10 days before the disaster cautioned against proceeding with the load test until all safety checks were completed. It went unheeded. By the end of the week, the committee issued a preliminary finding. Negligence, not sabotage or outside interference, had set the disaster in motion. The criminal inquiry focused on shipyard management and commissioning officials who authorized the test despite unresolved technical concerns. Official statements pointed to a technical anomaly, but the documents told a clearer story. Corners were cut, and the cost was paid in human lives. The investigation findings would soon shape the course of salvage and recovery, and determine who would be held to account for the loss in Sevastopol's harbor. The half-submerged hull of the PK-700 now sits across Yuzhnaya Bay, a steel barrier blocking the main channel for naval traffic. Salvage crews, led by veteran marine engineer Yuri Malyushev, began work before dawn on October 29th. Heavy barges and floating cranes were brought in from as far as Novorossiysk, their crews tasked with cutting through twisted beams and lifting the toppled tower section by section. Divers in cold-water suits mapped the wreck's underside, searching for structural weak points and hazardous leaks. Each step is slow and costly, with industry analysts estimating the operation could reach $12 million, though Russian authorities have released no official figures. The financial blow does not end at the water's edge. Defense sector observers estimate the total loss at over $90 million, combining sunk construction costs with the mounting price of recovery and environmental cleanup. For a Navy already under economic strain, the destruction of a $75 million asset, never once put to use, represents a setback that ripples far beyond Sevastopol. Naval analyst Svetlana Kravtsova notes the operational fallout. With PK-700 gone, the Black Sea Fleet loses its only crane capable of lifting nuclear submarine modules or major warship sections. Scheduled maintenance on Borei-class submarines, once planned for the coming winter, must now be postponed indefinitely. Without a suitable replacement, the fleet faces a backlog of essential repairs that could stretch 1 to 3 years. Older cranes, some dating back to the 1980s, are being pressed into service, but they lack the capacity for the heaviest lifts. The bay remains partially blocked. Salvage teams work around the clock, but the logistical bottleneck grows with each passing week. No new procurement contracts have been announced, and the Navy's maintenance schedules, once detailed and routine, are now blank where PK-700's name once appeared. The loss is not just a matter of steel and budget lines. It is a strategic wound, leaving Russia's most advanced submarines waiting in line for repairs that may not come anytime soon. A single technical lapse now blocks an entire fleet, proof that shortcuts cost more than time. As Russia's shipyards age and pressure mounts, safety standards face constant compromise. Today, the PK-700's wreckage still clogs Sevastopol's harbor, a daily reminder that infrastructure neglect is not just a local problem, It is a global warning. What price will be paid the next time critical maintenance meets a deadline?